What's going on, B&B community? It is the Bells and Balls podcast. Long as the balls are bouncing, the bells are ringing. Content we are slinging. It is the Bells and Balls podcast. My name is Marcus Atkinson. I am your host. If this is your first time joining us, please share, like, and subscribe this video. We hope that you like the content here and will enjoy the conversation that we're about to have, and hopefully it will spark some conversation about where we are with things. Um, for those that haven't figured out, based off the title of the video, what this is about, today we're going to talk about something in the bells part of our podcast. We're going to talk about what is known as the Manosphere. And I know that there may be people out there that are wondering, hey, well, what is the Manosphere? What does that actually mean? So, a couple of things that I'll point out about the Manosphere just to give some context. First of all, one of the common terms that get associated with the Manosphere is the red pill or the red pill community. If you think about the movie Matrix, there was a point in the movie where it was presenting a blue pill and a red pill, and each pill represented something different. Well, the red pill was almost like an enlightening choice, and so because of this, these internet streets, as I like to call them, have deemed these individuals that are in this manosphere community the red pill community. And basically, what it is a movement that focuses largely on the rights of men, goes against modern day feminism, and addresses some of the issues that modern society pushes out to counteract the role of men in society. So, some very interesting dialogue and conversation has come out of these individuals, and to be honest with you, a lot of what I'm going to focus is primarily dealing with the black community. There are other factions of this manosphere that are out there, and they have different purposes, different roles. Primarily, I'm going to focus on the black community just because there's a lot of dialogue that's been happening within the black community on the YouTube stream and on the internet in general when it comes to this. And so that's why I wanted to bring this topic up. Just some key players in this community that are out there. Like, of course, probably the most well known of them all is Kevin Samuels, who some call the Godfather. He's grown his platform significantly, really just focusing on these topics about dating, relationships, dealing with the modern woman, man of being men of high value. You'll hear a lot of those terms come from him. You have some other ones, like you have a younger group called Fresh and Fit. They're based out of Miami. They do a lot of similar content to Kevin Samuels. You got a couple others like O'Shea, Duke Jackson, and then the lead attorney. You have a number of individuals that are out there that are pointing out a lot of just really interesting points. And so the reason why I'm bringing this topic up is, so let me just first start out by saying that fundamentally, when I listen to a lot of these conversations, I I find myself agreeing a lot with the premise of many of the things that these men are saying. There are a lot of issues that are going on in the community, especially this modern time, with men and women. Like, I have a young son, and I just wonder what his life is going to be like dating and what the society is going to be like once he gets older and he's old enough to start dating or courting women. What is that what is that going to look like for him? I have a nephew right now that's older, that's going to be headed in that direction sometime soon as well, and I have some younger nephews that are on their way or are already here. They're going to have to deal with the same things my son have to. So within my own family, I just wonder how this next generation is going to handle these situations and how they're going to handle these in a healthy manner. So, although I generally would say that I do agree with the issue, addressing the issues that are happening, I don't necessarily agree with the solutions. And so, I think in order to get to the point of understanding the solution, I want to unpack what is really happening here and just give a little breakdown of how we got to this point. So I will say this, and when I mention these things, this is a general understanding. This doesn't apply to each and every situation like this, and so I want to make sure that I give that disclaimer before I go on to my points, and make sure that you all understand that this is really just a general understanding of what's actually happening. There are, of course, exceptions. There are, of course, cases when these things are not true. So I just want to make sure I clear that up before I go. So let's start with the foundation here. How do we get to this point? How do we get to this point of having this manosphere? Well, let's start out with the foundation of what I believe is the real issue, the real crux of the issue of where we have gotten. First of all, it starts out really with the family dynamic. When we think about the family dynamic, and especially in the black community, there is so much that has changed. We are in a society right now that really doesn't view the idea of the quote unquote nuclear family as the optimal way of having a family, raising a family. It's a lot of times it's shunned, it's frowned upon, or you have a lot of things that don't lead to or foster those type of environments. And so what's happened is there's been studies done on this, right? When we talk about nuclear family, man, woman, and child, right? That's what we're talking about, or children. That is really what we talk about with nuclear family. Well, there's been a number of studies done. I'll point out this one study that was done by Cornell University that concluded children who grew up in two-parent households are more than, or should I say, less likely to be involved with risk-taking behavior. What are those behaviors? That includes substance abuse, smoking, drinking, and they are less likely to be sexually active at a young age. So when we think about this information here, what we're actually looking at is, this is again in general, it's when you put children in these situations, they're more likely to not exhibit these extreme behaviors. Why am I pointing this out? Work with me here. I'm going to get to this point. Just work with me. I'm setting this up. All right. So you have that, right? You have this understanding that you need this family structure in order to build stability, to have healthy dynamics as far as children and their upbringing, their understanding of the world and society. And then you start having this change in roles in our society. And what I mean by change in roles, I'm really talking about women, right? And that's what a lot of these guys in the manosphere really talk about, is that these women that are going out there, they're trying to get six-figure jobs, and they're working, they're buying property, and I mean they're very successful, but then they also want men that are on their level. And what ends up happening is they are in this whole new realm that really is not as visited by their men counterparts. The the number of women that are educated and have high paying jobs in the modern times is completely different than what it was 30, 40 years ago. Listen to this. So, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, women's involvement in the labor market has changed in several notable ways over the past several decades. For example, women became more likely to pursue higher levels of education. From 1970 to 2018, the proportion of women from ages 25 to 64 in the labor force who held a college degree quadrupled, whereas the proportion of men with a college degree about doubled over that time. Okay, so what we're seeing, right, is from 1970 to just a couple of years ago, where the study was done, there is a major shift in what's happening in the labor market. The women are going out there, they're becoming more educated, they're getting these higher paying jobs, and it's really changing the dynamics. No longer are you having these 1950 style families where there's women that are staying at home and they are, taking care of the kids, and the men is going out and working. Again, this is not to say, this is right or wrong or anything like that. I'm going to get into that in a moment. Just point out facts right now. Also, another statistic by Bureau of Labor Statistics: among married couples, 53% had earnings from both the wife and the husband in 2017, compared with 44% in 1967. Well, what does that mean? That means that you're seeing an increase in the women and men working as well. Just a little bit of an uptick, but still an uptick. These rates are below the peak of 60%, which happened in 1996. Couples in which only the husband worked represented 19% of married couples in 2017. In 1967, it was 36. So we're talking about these families that had just men working. It went from 36% down to 19 in 2017. So you're seeing this dynamic that's changing. There's women working. There's a lot less women that are staying at home, and you're seeing this structure, this dynamic of what's happening just changing. One more statistic. In 1940, women made up just over 10% of the managerial positions in the work world. In 2009, that number was just under 40%. So we're talking about that number from managerial positions for women quadruple over the course of really 60 years. And so again, all these statistics are pointing to the shift in society. We're seeing the change where it's no longer about this dynamic of, again, women being at home, men taking care of the family and going out working while the women take care of the home. That's going away. That's changed so much, and it even shows in the household demographics as well. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, in 1970, 87% of kids under the age of 18 lived in two-parent households. In 2020, that percentage dropped down to 71%. For black families in 1970, that figure was 64%. In 2020, that percentage is 43%. Wow. So you're seeing a massive drop. Massive drop. So majority of black families are living in households where there aren't two-parent families. Right? So again, these are all statistics that are pointing to a shift in the environment that these kids are growing up in. They're growing up in less homes where there's two parent homes. They're growing up in less homes where there's a parent that's staying home with them. They're living in homes where there's both parents either are going out and working, or they're living in one parent or single parent home. So that's something that is continuing and showing statistically this trend. So what's happening now? What's happening is homes without role models and fathers to teach children how to identify what a good man is. Now, what I mean when I say that is, if you think about this, and again, why am I pointing this out? And what does this have to do to Manosphere? We're getting closer to that point. What is happening here is, when you think about the material that a lot of these guys in this community talk about, they talk about women and how they value men. Like, what do they value about men? A lot of times they talk about, well, how much money does he make? How tall is he? What kind of clothes does he wear? Things that are extremely superficial, right? How do we get to this point? Because this does happen, right? And there's been evidence, and that's actually one of the interesting things about Kevin Samuel's platform, and even like Fresh and Fit. Both of them, they will invite women on, which I don't even know why these women even go on these shows, because I mean, you kind of already know the formula already. You know that these guys are going to expose them, and just show them that the stuff that they say don't really make a lot of sense. But I digress. They go in there, I guess, for whatever reason. And so what ends up happening is, these women that are growing up in these situations where, maybe they don't have the influence of a parent that's, around them as much, or maybe they don't have a father figure that's around them. They don't understand what a man is. And what I mean by that is, a man isn't defined by what kind of job he has. He is not defined by, what kind of clothes he wears, his height, any of these things. Because at the end of the day, what you really should be looking at is the character of that man. Because that's the one thing that isn't fleeting, that doesn't change. Like, for example, a man can have a high paying 6 figure job, be, as Kevin Samuels would say, a high value man at this point, right? If he loses that job tomorrow, whatever happens, like maybe he has a business that, fell under the tank. I mean, we're in COVID times. There are a lot of businesses that are going away. Does that change anything? Well, if he doesn't make 6 figures at that point, how do those women see those men? Do they see him as less valuable? Do they see him as not really the same type of man that they envisioned him being before? It doesn't really, it shouldn't matter how much money he makes. Obviously, financial stability is obviously very important. Having someone that can help pay the bills and make sure you have a roof over your head and all those things, that's obviously very, very important. But when we start naming like exact figures, and we start pointing out, they have to do X, Y, Z, like they have to be able to afford a certain lifestyle that, some of these women that go on these podcasts, with these Manosphere men point out, it misses the point that these things are very fleeting. Even with height, yes, you can certainly have a preference for a man with, a certain height, but who's to say that that man that maybe is a little bit shorter isn't a good man, isn't a man that can help you take care of your kids? What's happening is, the character that is valued more and more, um, it's going away. Like, that's, we don't see women doing that. We don't see women that are looking for those type, and they're being exposed more and more with these platforms. And what's happening is, as a result, they're going out there looking for superficial things. And a lot of that is driving this content that we're seeing on these YouTube channels where these men are pointing out, these women that are going out looking for this stuff. The other thing that's happening is women are accepting larger roles in society, um, and that has changed the roles of men and women in homes. And so, as I was pointing out with the statistics, you don't have women that are sitting at home with the kids, dependent on the husband, and just supporting the husband in other ways at home, taking care of the house, maybe preparing meals and things like that. Those things have changed, right? Especially when you have a household where both parents are working, you don't really have a dynamic where it can be solely on a woman to do these things. Now, does that happen in some cases? Absolutely, absolutely. There are women that go out there and work, and they still do the cooking and cleaning, and they do those things to keep the household up. But um, you also have cases where those responsibilities are shared. And so the dynamics are changing because it has to change just based off of the need for or the changing of women working more. Now, some of that is because of the cost of living. It's very expensive. We're here in the North Virginia region, which is one of the most expensive regions in the country to live in. You'll be hard pressed to find a household, especially a household has young children in it, where there aren't two people working at home. Two people working outside the home. With that said, it also lends to the complete changing of the environment of how these kids are being brought up and what they're being exposed to and what they're being introduced to. And so the connection of home and the environment of the nurturing and the protection and the influence of parents is changed. It's not the same. It's not there. So what we're seeing as a result of these changes is there are a lot of women, as I pointed out, that are growing up without having healthy relationships with men. Rather, that's because of the, like I said, the single parentness that's existing. Rather, that's the disconnect with parents both working outside the household and not really having that connection at home where, maybe the mother would be there as support or influence. She may not be there as much as she would have been 30, 40 years ago to help her daughter to understand what it's like to be a wife and to support her husband and to take care of the home. Those things are changing. Those dynamics are changing. And so, as a result, if you have a generation of these women that are growing up in these households like this, you have women that don't understand how to interact with men, how to connect with men, and what to look for, and so they do it in ways that are unhealthy, and that's why you see these women out here that you know for lack of a better term, they come out with these thirst trap pictures where they, like Instagram models have scantily clad outfits on, just doing things that they can try to do to try to draw attention to themselves because they feel as though that's the only way they can connect with men because they don't understand, they don't have that dynamic, that connection like they maybe would have had 30, 40 years ago of how do I attract men? How do I connect with men? And we have this clashing that's happening, right? Because you have these men that maybe desire a woman that is more in the background, more supportive of where they are and where they're trying to go with their career. And there's women that are like, hey, I want to have a career. I want to, you know, be supported in the same way. And so now you got these gender roles that are going against one another. And they're making it also very difficult for men and women to have these connections. And so not only is this happening with the women, but it's also happening to men. All right. So I don't want to make this seem like, oh my goodness, it's just the women, just the women, just the women. And that's one of the parts I think gets missed in the manosphere community is that there's a focus on women, but there are men that are screwing up too, right? And what ends up happening is like when we talk about these women that are trying to find these really unhealthy ways to connect with men, well, you also got those men that see that and they're trying to connect with these women in unhealthy ways as well. Because how many times have we seen, one of these women that put one of these pictures up, and there's like hundreds of men that are comment, nice picture. Oh, I like that. Oh, you look so pretty. I mean, just all types of. I mean, it could be something as innocent as you look so pretty to, some things that are things I wouldn't repeat. That are put out under those pictures, is because for those men, they like what they see. Men are very visual. Men like seeing women, dressed provocatively and looking that way. And so it garners that attention and it garners those type of men to respond to them. And so in turn, these women are getting attention in the wrong ways. And they believe that, hey, this is great. I'm getting what I want. I'm getting the attention I want. But you're getting it from the wrong type of men. You're getting it from men that don't value you as a person. They value you because of your looks and because of what you provide for them physically. And so when you reduce someone to just a physical body, right? That you objectify them. You're not looking at that person as a whole person. You're looking at that person as just a an object. And so for those women that are going out there and they're, using their looks to try to attract men, they are attracting men that are just as empty as they are. I mean, these women believe that getting this attention is good when it's really not. These men aren't looking at you because they see you with your breasts out and your butt hanging out, and they're like, oh, she would make a great mother. No, they're not looking at you because of that. They don't see you as someone to have a family with. And what ends up happening is these women are going out there and they're doing this. And I mean, you see this throughout these podcasts. They find out when it's too late. They're in their 30s. They maybe have had children with multiple men, or they've been around the block a few times and they've been used up. Now all of a sudden, they're not as attractive, right? The options of the men that were giving them attention just aren't the same. And so now their whole world has changed. And so what we're doing is this is a cycle that's going on where we have the men that are gawking at these women. We have the women that are showing themselves off and they're just creating this attention that they think is feeding them and it's not, and creating these women that are becoming bitter and upset because they aren't really experiencing true love. They're not experiencing authentic relationship, and they're missing out on what they really maybe truly desire deep down. But they may not realize it because they don't know how to get to that point. And so what I'm really speaking on and what I really am trying to say, and to add on to that point also, um, when you get to this point as men where you're seeing those women that way, it doesn't stop with just one woman. It keeps going, going, going. And if you look at a woman from a object sample, like they're just objects, they're just sexual objects. You're not going to see this person as a whole person, and you're also not going to view a relationship with them from a standpoint of being monogamous because you don't see value in a relationship going any further than just simply sex, right? That's really what it's really all about. It's a conquest. It's about having sex, and it's about having the opportunity to have sex with that woman. Beyond that, that woman has no value to that man. And so women that are going out here and they're doing these things, they have to understand that what you're if you're ultimately looking for these relationships, you're not going to get the kind of relationships you're looking for by doing all these thirst trap pictures and videos and all these different things. That has to stop. And so where are we at with this? There are women out there that are craving this attention. They're thirsty for attention because they don't understand this dynamic of what men want, what men truly need in order to have a long-term, long-lasting relationship that hopefully will lead to marriage, maybe children. And because they haven't seen this model in their own lives, they don't understand how to get that point complete in their own lives. And so you see this vicious cycle: women going after men for the wrong reasons, men going after women for the wrong reasons, on and on and on and on. And they're creating generations of kids that are growing up in these broken homes where these relationships just continue on and on and on. And these cycles just keep going on and on and on. The only way, the only solution that is going to stop this, to stop these women that are bitter and they're constantly complaining about men aren't good, men ain't capable of being monogamous and being good husbands and all these things, is that we have to get back to the foundation. This is really where the community, the black community in general, thrive, and we can apply this to any community. To be honest with you, is it these kids and these relationships thrive off of having a healthy household. Now, does that mean that the women have to stay at home and not work outside the home? Doesn't necessarily mean that. But if you are going to do that, you got to have some balance, and you gotta understand what the roles are going to be for each person in that relationship, and you both got to be in agreement. Because if you're not, then you're going to clash, and you're going to create some dissension in your home, and that's going to create problems, and that's going to be the environment that your children are being raised in. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing a generation of young men and young women that are growing up, and they've grown up in these broken homes, in these broken relationships that they've witnessed growing up. And what are they doing? They're repeating the cycle. That's what we're seeing. And so what we need to do is we need to combat all this by teaching our children to do better. Teaching our children, for me, I got two daughters. I have to teach my daughters what they should be looking for in a husband. I have to model that behavior in my home in front of them. They need to see that. As fathers, we need to step up and show that. For the boys, we need to show them, hey, this is how you treat a woman. This is how you take care of a woman. For women, it's it's simply a matter of understanding if your desire is to take care of a family and to stay home, great, awesome. And you can find a man that can support you while you do that, awesome, great. But if you desire to have a career and you desire to work outside the home, you have to work together as a unit. You cannot be in competition with one another. And you can't focus on how much money a man makes. Yes, you want to have your bills paid. Yes, you want to be taken care of. But at the end of the day, you have to balance that with what kind of man are you raising a family with, and what kind of man is going to be teaching your children, boys and girls, how to grow up and how to be productive people in this society. Right now, we have a lot of people who are going out and having children, and they're not influencing their kids in a positive way. And we have to break that cycle. Because if we don't, we're going to keep having these conversations on the Manospheres and all these other red pill community vlogs and blogs and podcasts. And they're going to keep having this conversation. And it's happening. It's valid. It's out there. But what are we doing to change it? Love to hear your comments. Love to hear your thoughts. This is a very deep topic. I know there's a lot to unpack, but certainly would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave some comments below. Of course, you can reach us on social media. Leave your comments, your thoughts on there as well. And take care.